Welcome. This is Sara with Croatians Online with another podcast here on our website. Today, I have a really exciting person joining us all the way from Australia. Our guest is Professor Ivan Marušić. He is an engineer and physicist, as well as a pro-vice-chancellor, and Redmond Barry Distinguished Professor at the University of Melbourne. He is internationally recognized for his contributions to the field of fluid dynamics. In recognition of his contributions, he has been elected as both a fellow of both the Australian Academy of Science and the Australian Academy of Technology and Engineering. Additionally, he has been honored with the Order of the Croatian Pletera by the Republic of Croatia and the Stanley Corson Award from the American Physical Society, and most recently honored as a fellow of the Royal Society. The Royal Society is a fellowship of many of the world's most eminent scientists and is the oldest scientific academy in continuous existence. Professor Marušić joins the esteemed ranks of many wonderful scientists before him, and he is also the 5th Croatian in history to ever receive this honor. Professor, it is a joy to have you here today. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you, Sarah. Thanks for that kind introduction.
We are super excited, and we want to congratulate you on being elected a fellow of the Royal Society. I guess my first question is really, how did you feel? We hear about these honors and we understand how important it is. So what is it like getting that phone call, receiving the honor that this has happened for you?
Yeah, it was really quite extraordinary, actually. I had a hard time believing it. It's actually a strange process, which, you're nominated by current fellows. And I knew I had been nominated, and that was an honor in itself. I never thought I'd actually be elected. But they actually contacted me a few months back saying, in strict confidence, that my name had been added to the ballot. I didn't really understand what that means, because you are elected, the fellows have to vote. Now in hindsight, after speaking with more people, I realized that's the biggest step, is getting on the ballot. Some people said it's a formality after then, but they still have to go through the process. So while I knew, and it was terribly exciting, I was sworn to secrecy, so I couldn't really share it, and I wasn't quite sure if or when it might happen. So it was that sort of for a couple of months in this sort of suspended state, and then they finally announced it. So it was very extremely gratifying and really wonderful. So you don't go into research in this type of work for such accolades. I think you would go crazy if you anticipated and hoped yet, you would get it and expected to, but to actually receive it is really wonderful. So, it's certainly the highlight of my career.
We're so proud and happy as well to watch your journey, and I think as Croatians, we're certainly very excited to have that happening for you as well, because it's always exciting to support our fellow Croatians out there doing amazing and historic things in the world. Yeah. So your work is definitely something of a lot of note. I saw the amazing things in the research that you've done. So if you could trace back your roots in the field and sort of give us a sense of your journey to where you are today in your work.
Yeah, it's been a long journey, but it starts. I was born in Široki Brijeg, a poor family in a very poor part of then Herzegovina. Croatian. And my parents left because really they had no opportunities. They wanted a better life for their children, as many immigrants do, but also to flee communism as well. So as soon as the borders opened, they wanted to leave. And I look at my parents' journey, and they never had the opportunity to go to school. So my dad worked full-time from 11 years old. He was 2 of 7 children that survived, and his mother was frail, and he had a younger sister, and he supported the household from himself at 11 years old. So, I think he's really quite smart, but he never had the opportunity. So he was intent that his children would go to university, even though he didn't really know what that meant. We migrated to Australia when I was 3 years old. So all my living memory is in Australia, but I grew up identifying as a Croatian. I went to school, didn't speak a word of English, and they called out the names, and they Ivan Marusic. I had no idea who they were talking about. Then I kind of by default realized that's me. So then, I go by both Ivan or Ivan, that's fine. But, so I had this sort of, and I grew up identifying as Croatian. Then I went back for the first time when I was 17 and realized, well, I'm nothing, I don't feel like that's home, nor did I. So I kind of felt displaced in a way. And I think maybe for a lot of migrants, that's that journey, because you leave a place thinking it'll be the same when you return, but it's not. It's a dynamic thing. It evolves. And so, but over time, I've learned to celebrate both my heritages. So particularly once Croatia became independent, I went back, and my parents then moved back and had a house there, and then would travel backwards and forwards between. So, I've always enjoyed, going to Croatia and celebrating that heritage. But in terms of my journey, I had no role models and really didn't know what university or science or what that actually meant. So I went to school. I enjoyed school. I enjoyed maths and physics. So I did the subjects that I enjoyed. I had a wonderful maths teacher who pushed me in year 9 and 10 in a really good way. Basically, he actually never answered any of my questions. He encouraged me to work things out for myself, which I did. And that gave me a lot of independence and then confidence in myself. And so when I went to university, I got good grades and enrolled in engineering, had no idea what that actually meant. But I topped the class, and I realized I'm doing something right. I was going to drop out because I didn't think I was suited to it. But I kept at it. But then I was really inspired. I had a wonderful lecturer, Tony Perry, who was really, he's a world-renowned physicist and engineer in fluid mechanics. And I just fell in love with the subject. And started doing research and haven't turned back. So I knew at that point I wanted a career in research. And so I did my PhD as well with him in Melbourne. But the really important step in my career was moving. And I moved to the US. So at that stage, I had a young family, 3 young children. And we moved. My first job was at the University of Minnesota. And I went there as an assistant professor. And had 10 wonderful years there, or 10 winters. The winters aren't so great.
They're pretty brutal.
But it was such a wonderful place, and but it really opened my eyes to the possibilities, and I was able to achieve at a high level, so much so that I was able to return to Australia as a senior professor, and sort of haven't looked back since. But the US, the opportunities I got there, and just the attitude towards science is just so refreshing. And I was fortunate enough to receive a funding from the Packard Foundation. David and Lucille Packard, founder of one of the co-founders of HP. And he wanted to give money. He wanted to support young early career researchers. And it was a wonderful opportunity, because they asked, do something that no funding agency would support you to do. In other words, take a risk. And I was, that's why I see good fortune. I was lucky enough to get one of these. They're pretty hard to get, but fortunately I got one. And so I did what they asked. I actually went and I had some ideas, so I went and did experiments in the atmospheric surface layer, so out in the desert, which if I applied for a grant to say I want to work in field measurements, everyone will say, well, you have no track record in that. And you get shot down straight away. So it allowed me to take a risk, but there I anticipated that I would see effects that we would see in large wind tunnels, which this was controversial at the time. but it paid off. And we were able to make a major discovery. And that's sort of been the basis of my work for the past 20 years, I would say. And really, it's on the basis of that I was elected into the Royal Society and my other awards.
Wow. What an amazing journey. And I think what I'm so appreciative of, and thank you for sharing, is that I think so many people who have migrated and gone through journeys such as yours, and current young people listening today too, can really see that things are possible, where, you know, that if you work hard and you're interested in it, that there is so much that is so possible for someone to really do, which I love. I love hearing that.
I really do believe that. I mean, and you know, there are places, but you've got to find the right environment that supports you. I made a commitment to do the best work I could. And I felt like I had nothing to lose because I came from very humble beginnings. So, you know, if I had been a laborer, that would have been perfectly fine. You know, there were no expectations of me. The person pushing, I would push myself, you know, and in fact, it was the opposite. Most, you know, usually with my kids, I'm pushing them to do their homework when they were younger. My parents were the opposite. They were telling me to stop working so hard, you know. But, you know, if you try to find, but I was passionate about it. I really want, and that's why I moved to the US. I saw that it was a natural step for me. So really that became my, you know, apart from my family, that was the most important thing to me. And so, but I did it because I wanted to, not for anyone else. And that's when you work hardest, but I enjoy it. To me, it's not a job. It's my passion. It's my hobby.
I love that. I love hearing that. I love when I meet with people and I'm speaking with people who just, and we can tell just in how you're speaking about your work, that there is a real love for what you do. And I think that has also been, I'm sure, a part of what has gotten you so far, is that you've really loved everything that you do, and it shows. And I think that's essential to our work. And I love that you're sharing that part of it too, that it you know, work can be something that we love, and it can be really exciting as well. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think for my mantra was, while I didn't really understand, I went to engineering because someone, you know, I understood that engineers had jobs. I actually wanted to do physics.
Okay.
But then I didn't understand, what do you do as a physicist? Like, can you have a salary? I had no idea.
Yes.
And in fact, you know, as I said, I'd gone through engineering and I topped the class, but I really felt like a fraud. Because you know, all the other people knew all these engineering things about, and I had no idea. So, you know, I would then, because it was mechanical engineering, I decided to pull apart engines, and just, not because I wanted to, just I felt like I needed to get more hands-on experience. But then when I sat through the fluid mechanics lectures, I realized, oh, now this is what I want to do.
It's beautiful.
And I actually went and worked as an engineer you know, over a summer internship, and then I understood what engineers did, and I realized I don't want to be an engineer. I mean, it's great work, and I actually love that I have that background, but my passion was in doing research. And then I was amazed you could actually get paid to do something you love to do. So yeah, I see myself as very lucky.
That's great. That's great. And your work, you know, with fluid dynamics and everything, you know, I'm not a scientist. I'm not, you know, an expert in these fields, but what I found so fascinating was that there were some of what you have done that really resonates with stuff that I do, which is like get on an airplane or get on a cruise ship or things like that. So there was so much of what I was reading that I was like, wow, that's so fascinating, the work that must go into understanding that, and also really giving to those, you know, aspects, because so many people are using these types of modes of transportation throughout the world. So I thought that was really, really great. So if you could talk more a little bit about that particular aspect of your research.
Yeah, I think, you know, so the field is fluid mechanics. By fluid, we mean any liquid or gas. And, you know, it's one of the fundamental subjects in a mechanical engineering degree, at least. But it's also often described, the problem of turbulent flow, which is a state of the fluid. You know, when you see the inherent mixing in a plume, that's turbulence. And we live, our environment is turbulent. If it wasn't, I mean, the world would be a very different place. So we need turbulence, but it causes losses, friction losses. So the drag on an aircraft, the pumping energy you need to move things through pipes and so on. All of that is because of turbulent flow. And so it's something that's all around us, but you're often, you're blind to it until you visualize it. But it's also an incredibly important problem of physics. It's often described as the last great unsolved problem of classical physics. And I think that also drew me to it, just the complexity of it. You know, it's over 100 years old. People have been working on this problem. And you know, I wanted to work on something very challenging, but I found it a very rich and interesting problem. And so, you know, I'm still working on it. It's really a problem that you can spend. There've been multiple careers, and it's still not solved. But we feel like we've made some advances. But it's like anything. You observe something in nature, and you ask the question, why? Why does that happen? And that really is the wonder of the physical world, and understanding it and using different tools through experiment, through mathematics. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I love that, asking the question why. As I'm, you know, learning and growing every day, I love that question myself too, to ask why about things. And I think really exploring the whys. And I don't know that I ever thought to ask why turbulence and why things is just sort of a person who doesn't understand it, but there is so much that's so fascinating behind it. And like you said, it's happening all around us. So I love that, how you shared about that, and how people can really, I think now, connect the dots in terms of the work that you do and just the life that we're all living on this earth. Fascinating.
Yeah, look, yeah, I think it's, sorry, my light just
That's
went
okay.
out.
That's okay.
It's it's fundamental in all things, but it's also, I see it as also a place that I will now, you know, perhaps now as I'm more senior in my career, I have a little bit more time to sort of reach out to people outside of my own field. So I've been talking to historians and social scientists around their perceptions. They see turbulence in a very different way, you know, chaotic phenomena. And so it's very interesting to have those dialogues. And I love talking to them because they think in a different way. And they ask really interesting questions. And that kind of poses you to, particularly, you know, I realize, you know, we've been working on this problem for 100 years, just doing the same, following the same path everyone's followed is not necessarily going to pay off. So it's really about looking at creative, different ways. And I think the unique character about research as an endeavor is one, you have to be smart, right? And you have to be able to do all the, you know, the technical things that you need to do, but you also have to be creative, and that is very hard to teach someone. So quite often graduate students will come to me and, you know, and I'll say, well, I got, you know, fantastic grades. And I say, well, that's great, but all I know is you're good at taking exams, where solving problems where there is a solution. But how are you going to do when you're faced with a problem where you can't solve it? And some find that incredibly, they can't get past that.
Yes. But
it's really about being creative, a new idea discovered. I see it as a gift, but you have to be receptive to it. You have to be working on it. And that is fundamental to any endeavor, whether it be in the arts or in literature. You know, there are some things you're inspired and you do something special. And that's a very euphoric feeling if you can ever, you know, if you're lucky enough to get that 1 or 2 times in your life, then you're really blessed.
That's great. That's great. And I'm glad that you mentioned your work with students in the university. I work with young people as well in a high school setting. And I often see that when they're getting ready to go off to university, many of them are seeking the grade, the you know, just getting the exam done, doing the things. So I think, to your point, there's so much more deeper things into like understanding and learning and being open-minded to so much. So I guess my question really for you is, young people getting into a field like this, what advice do you give them? What do you like kind of lead them towards awareness in the work that they'll end up doing in the future?
Yeah, so I think my advice to anyone would be, do something that you really enjoy. And it's something that you know, if you love something, it's not work then. And, you know, so choose an area, and everyone has different passions. You know, some people get excited about biology, Others get excited about flutes.
Yep.
Find the thing that motivates you. And quite often, I hear a lot of people driven by wanting to solve a problem. And that's very noble and wonderful, but I think that's a hard journey. Yeah. Choose a problem that you really enjoy working on, because then I think you can go to a different level. Because I hear a lot of people say, I want to, help solve the climate problem. And absolutely, that's what you should be doing. But align that with something that really, you're really passionate about. Because I think it's that level of engagement and commitment, I think, that means it's sustainable. So as I said, people say, well, I work regular hours, but when I go home, I don't stop thinking because I'm doing something I want to be thinking about. Yeah. And of course, you have to work hard. There's no, yes. But hard work only gets you a certain fraction of the way. You need those moments of inspiration to actually make that major step. And then, then you have that core idea and you build a house around it. But ultimately, it's those one or two key things. And I think you really have to be engaged at a level where this is, you're so passionate about something that you can actually make that type of breakthrough. And that's if you're interested in research. Now, many other rewarding careers. My parents could not believe that I didn't do medicine, as was the standard. If you got high enough grades, why wouldn't you? And they just couldn't understand why. Why? I said, but I'm not interested in that at all. And, in the end, they trusted me.
Right.
But I actually know a lot of people who've chosen careers because they think that's the right thing to do, but they're actually not interested, So I'd find, some people are made to be doctors, and just because you get grades, or, being a doctor or lawyer is a wonderful pursuit, but don't do it because you got the grade. Do it because that's what you want to do.
Agreed. And I think that part right there is the most important part, is that, certainly the grades can come, but is there a love for what you do? Is there a desire to want to know more about what you do? And I think that's key, because I think that can oftentimes get very lost in translation, and especially in young minds a lot of the time. So great. Okay. Looking to the future, any goals, hopes, things that you want to continue doing for yourself in your work?
Of course, I'll continue my research. Okay. I've taken on some administrative jobs I see that as a service, but, I have a joint appointment. So half the time I do this administrative role as a Vice-Chancellor, but I have 50% dedicated to my research, and that's the way I'd like it, at least. But so I obviously keep going. I think being in the Royal Society now gives me an opportunity to contribute to its mission. It's a very important organization internationally. It's an important voice for science internationally. So if I can contribute, I certainly will be happy to. So I'm looking forward to that chapter of my career.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. And we will certainly be looking forward to watching you, especially our Croatian community, which brings me to our last and final question. Since we are Croatians Online, we always love to ask our guests, what is your favorite thing about Croatian culture?
I suppose there are so many. But I think the biggest, if I go back to Croatia, and particularly, back to Široki Brijeg, I think the part that I find solace and peace is just the culture, the deep faith in the people, in the community. I'm a person of faith, and that's very important to me. And there it's very much lived. And where Australia is much more a secular society, which, which is fine. But I like the traditions and the customs that revolve around feast days, and there's a different level of reverence, which is really nice. I really like that part of it.
Yes, I agree. And I think that, interestingly enough, whenever I ask that question, that some of that is most common. It's the community, it's the traditions that get held onto year after year after year that people so much still resonate with, no matter where they have gone off into the world. That connects them so much still to Croatia and their roots.
Yeah.
So we love that. We love that. Thank you so
And
much.
also, of course, also in like our celebration of soccer and
Oh,
uh,
yes. Mhm.
supporting the Vatrani. They're going into the
Yes.
Euros now,
Yes, they
so
are.
wish them the
Yes.
best.
Definitely, definitely go Croatia. So we are definitely all going to be watching from around the world, which is another thing that I really also have loved is that in the beauty of technology is that we are able to connect together, you and I, me here in New York, you in Melbourne, and then like here we are able to still meet each other and stay connected to our Croatian community as well in such a way. And we'll be watching the soccer and all the things to come that our people are doing out there as well. So thank you so much. Congratulations once again. It was really great to hear. We are so excited for you, and we're looking forward to seeing all the wonderful things to come for you.
Well, thank you very much,
Thank
Sarah.
you.